a man falls face first onto the rocky soil of an olive grove, pressing his forehead into the cold dirt. We read it as a remedy for physical exhaustion. We think he is simply asking his friends to keep him company in his darkest hour, hitting the cold dirt. The text says he is deeply grieved, to the point of death. The crush of Gethsemane is not just pressing down on him, it is pressing down on them. The atmosphere is saturated with an invisible, oppressive terror. He turns to the three men. He gives them a single order: stay here and watch with me. Gregoreuo, keep your souls awake. He walks a stone's throw away. He falls on his face. He begs the Father for another way. The olive branches groan in the wind. The cold bites at their skin. Peter blinks. His vision blurs. His chin drops to his chest. James leans against the rough bark of a tree. John closes his eyes. The crushing weight of the moment does not keep them awake. It puts them to sleep. Luke's gospel diagnoses it medically and spiritually. He writes that they were sleeping from sorrow. This sleep is not just biological fatigue. It is a spiritual anesthetic. It is the human mind shutting down because it cannot bear the weight of reality. Jesus returns. He finds them unconscious. He looks down at Peter, Simon. The rock. Could you not watch with me 1 hour? The man who just hours ago swore he would die for his teacher cannot even sacrifice 60 minutes of sleep for him. Jesus issues the command again, adding the reason why. Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. He is not asking for a favor. He is throwing them a lifeline. He goes back into the dark. He bleeds. He prays. He returns, like a dying man asking someone to hold his hand. But if you look closer at the original words, they are asleep again. Their eyes are heavy. He leaves. He prays. He returns a third time. Still asleep. 3 times, he warns them the perimeter is under attack. 3 times, they choose the comfort of the dark. And then the torches appear. A mob steps out of the blackness. Swords clank against armor. Wood burns in the night air. Judas leans in for a kiss. The disciples wake up. But it is too late. The breach has already happened. The physical sleep was merely the symptom. The spiritual sleep was the disease. Peter panics. He draws a sword, strikes wildly in the dark, and then he breaks. He runs into the night. The failure in the courtyard did not begin by the fire. It began in the garden. But this paralysis is not confined to first-century olive groves. It has a modern equivalent, and it is quietly dismantling the church today. You feel it in the quiet moments of the week. You are sitting in the glow of a screen at midnight, scrolling past endless streams of outrage and entertainment, letting the harsh blue light wash over your tired eyes. You are exhausted, not just physically, but deep in your bones. The world is loud. The demands on your life are relentless. And the easiest thing to do, the most natural response to the overwhelming crush of modern existence, is to shut down. The soft hum of the refrigerator in the dark becomes the soundtrack. At the specific moments he chooses to say it. At what actually happens to the men who fail to do it, you start to see something, to your own quiet surrender. We look at Peter, James, and John sleeping in the dirt, and we judge them for their weakness. We wonder how they could close their eyes when the Son of God was sweating blood a stone's throw away. But we do the exact same thing. We just have more sophisticated ways of doing it. When the pressure of your marriage, your finances, or your own quiet internal despair grows too heavy, you do not usually run out into the street waving a sword. You retreat. You binge watch. You doom scroll. You medicate with endless distraction. You seek the modern equivalent of a dark olive grove. Luke diagnosed the disciples as sleeping from sorrow. They were anesthetized by their own grief and confusion. If you are honest, that same heavy, paralyzing sorrow is often what drives you to the couch, to the screen, to the glass in your hand. You are trying to escape the weight of your own Gethsemane. But this quiet shutting down is not a harmless biological reaction. It is a tactical vulnerability. Jesus commands you to watch to Gregoreuo, not because he wants you to live in a state of paranoid anxiety, but because he knows how the enemy actually operates. Temptation does not usually arrive announcing its presence with a trumpet blast. It slips in while you are numbing yourself. You think you are just resting your eyes. The standard reading completely misses. This command is not a request for companionship. It is a military protocol for survival. You think you are just taking a much-needed break from the overwhelming weight of your reality. But while you are asleep, the perimeter is breached. The thief does not wait for you to feel rested. He waits for you to check out. The moment you disconnect from the spiritual reality of your circumstances is the exact moment the enemy walks right through the front door. You might think this kind of quiet, internal drifting only ruins individual lives. You might think it is just a personal struggle that stays isolated in your living room. But Jesus reveals that this exact same sleep can consume entire communities. In fact, decades after the garden, he speaks to a church that looked incredibly successful, wealthy, and alive to everyone around them. But when he looked at their foundation, he saw a city whose eyes were completely shut. High above the Hermus Valley, the Acropolis of Sardis touches the clouds. The rock faces drop straight down. The stone walls are massive. The wind whips across the plateau. The city is untouchable. King Croesus sleeps soundly. His Lydian guards patrol the high walls, far below them. The Persian army of Cyrus the Great surrounds the mountain, staring up at an impossible climb. The Persians cannot shatter the gates. Jesus was not offering a bumper sticker for your prayer life. He was diagnosing a disease. They cannot starve the city. The siege is at a standstill. Then, a Lydian guard leans over the stone parapet. His helmet slips. It tumbles down the sheer cliff, clanking against the rocks. The guard climbs over the wall, carefully, stepping down a hidden, jagged crack in the rock face to retrieve his armor. Down in the brush, a Persian soldier watches. That night, a small Persian strike force climbs that exact crack. They reach the top. They pull themselves over the ledge. They find the walls completely abandoned. The guards are asleep. The city does not fall to a battering ram. It falls to a heavy pair of eyelids. 200 years later, the Greek general Antiochus lays siege to the exact same city. And the exact same thing happens. A secret path, a night raid, a sleeping guard. Twice. The impregnable fortress falls because the men on the wall assumed the sheer height of the rock meant they did not have to pay attention. Centuries pass. This history is burned into the cultural memory of the city. And in the late 1st century, the resurrected Jesus dictates a letter to the Christians living in that exact location. You find it in Revelation chapter 3. He says, "I know your works. You have the reputation of being alive, but you are dead." Then, he issues a command that strikes. He was naming a very specific spiritual somnolence that overtakes the human heart right before a catastrophe strikes. At the core of their historical trauma, wake up. In the Greek text, it is the exact same word from Gethsemane, Gregoreuo, keep watch. The church in Sardis is not facing violent Roman persecution. They are not being thrown to the lions or burned at the stake. They are wealthy. They are comfortable. They are coasting on a reputation of spiritual vitality. They think their spiritual walls are high enough. They think their gates are secure. Jesus warns them that the enemy is already climbing the rock. He says, "If you will not wake up, I will come like a thief, and you will not know at what hour. I will come against you." He is pulling from their own military history. He is pulling from his own Olivet discourse. The thief does not announce his arrival. The Persian soldier does not blow a trumpet. The breach happens when the guards assume the silence of the night equals safety. The church in Sardis was not destroyed by heresy. It was destroyed by comfort. In Gethsemane, Jesus had warned Peter about this exact mechanism. He did not just tell his friends to stay awake. He told them why they had to keep their eyes open. He gave them the exact target, the enemy. He knew that the greatest danger to his followers was not the Romans with their swords, or the Pharisees with their plots, was aiming for, and it hinges on a second Greek word that we almost always misunderstand. When Jesus stands over the sleeping men in Matthew chapter 26, He does not just give them the command. He gives them the consequence. Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. We hear the word temptation in English, and we immediately picture a lure. We imagine a conscious enticement to do something immoral, a shiny object dangling in front of our faces, trying to trick us into making a bad choice. We think of temptation as a trap designed to catch our hidden desires, but the Greek word Jesus uses here carries a much heavier, much more violent weight. The word translated as temptation is the Greek peirasmos. It is a noun derived from the root verb peirazo. In ancient Greek literature, this word did not originally mean to entice someone to sin. It meant to test, to try, or to prove the structural integrity of an object by applying immense stress. It is the language of metallurgy and engineering. It describes the moment a blacksmith holds raw silver over a white-hot forge until the metal melts and the impurities bubble to the surface. It is the act of putting a heavy load on a wooden timber until it either holds firm or violently snaps in two. The greatest danger was the slow, quiet creeping of sleep, the numbness that sets in when you are standing in a war zone. Years later, the Apostle James will use this exact same word to open his letter. He writes in James chapter 1, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds." The word for trials is peirasmos. A man does not count a lure to sin as joy. He counts a proving ground as joy, because it reveals what his faith is actually made of. That root changes everything about the warning in the garden. When Jesus tells Peter to watch and pray, he is not warning him that a shiny enticement is coming. He is warning him that a crushing, unbearable pressure is about to be applied to his soul. Peirasmos is not a lure to do evil. It is a pressure test of your allegiance. The Roman cohort, the torches in the dark, the drawn swords, the high priest's courtyard, the freezing wind, the accusations, all of it was the forge. All of it was the heavy load placed on the timber of Peter's faith. Jesus was trying to tell him that if you do not stay awake and pray before the pressure test arrives, your structural integrity will fail the moment the weight drops. You will not break because you suddenly desire to do evil. You will break because you do not have the spiritual density to hold the load, but you think you are in a waiting room. The real question of these passages isn't, why couldn't Peter stay awake? It's this: your collapse will not be a choice. It will be an inevitability. Sleep leaves the soul brittle, and when you trace this thread all the way back through the New Testament, from the quiet deception of Sardis to the crushing press of Gethsemane, every single time Jesus commands us to keep our eyes open, a stunning, singular picture begins to emerge. A doorkeeper sat by the threshold in the dark and watched for a master with no itinerary. 4 fishermen sat on a sunny hillside and received a battle briefing for an invisible war. The Son of God fell into the dirt of Gethsemane and sweat blood under the crush of the world. 3 friends leaned against ancient olive trees and chose the anesthetic of sleep over the agony of prayer. The torches appeared out of the blackness, and a brittle faith shattered in the high priest's courtyard. A Lydian guard dropped his helmet over an impregnable wall, and a fortress fell to a silent thief. A wealthy church coasted on a reputation of life, and the resurrected Christ commanded them to open their dead eyes. What exactly were they supposed to be watching for? Because the answer changes how you read every single warning in the Gospels. Same command, same stakes. But here's the part I keep coming back to. The diagnosis of Dr. Luke in the garden, sleeping from sorrow. Peter did not fall asleep because he didn't care about Jesus. He fell asleep because the sorrow was too heavy to carry. He tried to survive the crushing weight of that peirasmos by shutting his eyes to reality. And his failure is recorded in the text not to condemn him, but to warn us. If you are in a season where the weight of your life feels unbearable, where the grief or the pressure makes you just want to numb out, scroll away, or close your eyes to the spiritual reality of your circumstances, Gregoreuo, stay awake. The demand is not for you to manufacture strength you do not actually possess. The demand is to keep your eyes open and pray so that, when the heavy timber of your life is tested, you are tethered to the only one who has already survived the crush. If this opens something for you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is walking through a season of heavy pressure. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. And may the God who stayed awake, the night air is thick, biting against the skin, smelling of crushed olives and the lingering smoke of Passover fires. It shifts the burden from trying to be a good Christian who prays more, to understanding the invisible mechanics. In the darkest garden in human history, walk with you through your own and give you the grace to keep your eyes open in the dark, of how temptation actually breaches the human soul. To find the answer, you cannot start in the shadows of Gethsemane. The garden is the final test, but it is not the syllabus. To understand what Jesus means when he demands that his people keep their eyes open, you have to rewind a few days. You have to go back to a moment when the sun was still shining, the massive stone walls of the temple were still towering over the city, and Jesus looked into the future and described a thief walking silently through the dark. A massive limestone block, 40 feet long and weighing hundreds of tons, sits perfectly in the retaining wall of the Temple Mount. It is an architectural marvel of the ancient world. The disciples are staring at these stones, running their hands over the cold masonry, completely awestruck by the sheer scale of Herod's building project. They point them out to Jesus, expecting him to share their national pride. Instead, Jesus shatters their awe with a single sentence. He tells them that not one stone will be left upon another, a stone's throw away. His closest friends are slumped against ancient, gnarled trunks. Their breathing is deep and rhythmic. Everything they are looking at will be reduced to rubble. That physical disruption, the prophesied destruction of the most permanent structure they had ever known, becomes the catalyst for the longest unbroken teaching Jesus gives about the future. Scholars call it the Olivet Discourse. It is a sprawling, complex prophecy delivered on the slopes of the Mount of Olives. He speaks of wars, rumors of wars, falling stars, and families betraying one another. The disciples want a timeline. They want dates, signs, and a measurable countdown to the end of the age, so they can prepare themselves. But Jesus refuses to give them a calendar. Instead, he gives them a parable about a doorkeeper. In a wealthy first-century Greco-Roman estate, the doorkeeper was the slave stationed at the threshold. His task was singular and unyielding. While the rest of the household slept in their beds, he sat by the heavy, iron-reinforced gate, listening to the ambient noise of the dark street, watching the shadows shift across the courtyard. The master has gone on a journey, and he has left no itinerary. He might return at evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows in the freezing pre-dawn air, or at morning. The doorkeeper's vigilance is not passive observation. It is active anticipation. He is not merely waiting for the master to arrive to politely open the door. Their eyes are sealed shut. He had asked them for one thing, just one, and they failed. He is guarding the house against the thief who uses the master's absence as cover. If the doorkeeper's eyes close, the perimeter is breached. The entire household is compromised. In this cultural context, sleep is not a biological necessity that simply takes over at the end of a long shift. Sleep is a dereliction of duty. It is the precise moment the guard lowers his weapon and surrenders the gate. In the span of just 5 verses, in Mark chapter 13, Jesus hammers this specific concept 4 separate times. Take heed. Keep on the alert. Stay awake. What I say to you, I say to all. Stay awake. The repetition is staggering. He is speaking to men who are sitting safely on a sunny hillside, feeling the afternoon breeze, looking at a beautiful, bustling city. There is no immediate danger in sight. There is no Roman cohort marching up the road with drawn swords. Yet Jesus is urgently conditioning them for a stealth attack. He is trying to tell them that the temple stones are not the only things about to be torn down. Their entire spiritual reality is about to be violently shaken. Jesus frames this warning around his second coming, at the end of history. But that echo does not stop there. Because the ultimate test of the doorkeeper is not just a cosmic event. You probably know the story of Gethsemane. It is the climax of human failure right before the cross, thousands of years away. The first real test is going to happen in less than 48 hours. The sun drops below the Judean hills. Shadows stretch across the deep ravine of the Kidron Valley. The massive, golden stones of the temple complex turn gray in the fading light. Jesus sits on the Mount of Olives. 4 fishermen sit opposite him. Peter, James, John, Andrew. They ask for a sign. He gives them a warning. They ask for a timeline. He gives them a posture. They want to know when the world will end. He wants to know if they will stay awake. The wind picks up. Fine dust blows across the limestone. Down in the city below, thousands of evening lamps begin to flicker in the windows. The Passover crowds are settling in for the night. The smell of roasting lamb drifts up the hillside. The world feels safe. The world feels normal. And in the middle of that profound normalcy, Jesus lists the horrors to come. Nation will rise against nation. Earthquakes will shatter the ground. Famines will sweep the land. Brother will betray brother. The sun will go dark. Jesus finds his disciples sleeping, wakes them up, and issues a command that echoes through the rest of the New Testament. Watch and pray. The moon will refuse to shine. Stars will fall from the sky. The disciples are paralyzed. They want a map out of the maze. He does not give them a map. A nation will rise. Stay awake. The earth will shake. Stay awake. You will be dragged before councils. Stay awake. The Master will return at midnight. Stay awake. This is not a theology lesson. It is a battle briefing. The Greek text in Mark chapter 13 is relentless. It is staccato. It hits like a hammer, 4 times in just a handful of breath. Look out. Keep alert. Stay awake. Watch. He is staring directly at the 4 men who will eventually lead his church. He knows exactly what they are going to do in less than 2 days. He knows that when the darkness actually comes, they will not be standing tall, looking at the horizon. They will be collapsed in the dirt, entirely consumed by their own exhaustion. The disciples pull their cloaks tight against the evening chill. They hear his words, but they do not feel the weight. They assume watch just means paying attention to the news. They assume it means looking for geopolitical signs or strange weather. They think he is speaking in broad, poetic terms about the distant future. It happens here in the garden. It happens days earlier on a hillside overlooking the temple. But there is a detail hiding in plain sight within the language he uses. The specific word Jesus chooses here has nothing to do with looking at the sky. It has to do with what happens inside your brain when the lights go out. In the English translations of the New Testament, we usually read this command as watch or stay awake. And because we are reading in English, we naturally attach English concepts to it. We picture a sentry staring off into the distance, scanning the horizon for enemy movement. We picture a night watchman fighting off heavy eyelids with a cup of strong coffee, trying desperately to push through biological fatigue. But the word Jesus uses here is entirely different. The word translated as watch is the Greek Gregoreuo. It appears 22 times in the New Testament, and its etymology points to a specific kind of intensity. Gregoreuo comes from the root verb egero, which means to awaken, to arouse, to stir up from sleep, or even to raise from the dead. It is not a passive word. It does not mean merely keeping your eyes open because you are scheduled to be on duty. It happens decades later in a letter to a church that thought it was alive but was actually dead. It means being in a state of continuous, hyper-alert vigilance. It is an active, conscious refusal to let your mind slip into lethargy. It is the sharp intake of breath when you realize the room you are sitting in is no longer safe. The Apostle Peter, the very man who will fail to do this in just a few days, eventually writes a letter to the early church. And in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, he uses the exact same word. He writes, "Be sober, be vigilant, Gregoreuo, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour." If realizing how much is hidden beneath our English translations is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the warning follows them from the Mount of Olives into a quiet grove of ancient trees. When you trace Gregoreuo through the original language, you find that it is almost never used to describe looking for geopolitical events or signs in the sky. It is consistently used in the context of moral and spiritual alertness. The exact same command, again and again. Most people assume when Jesus tells his disciples to watch, he is just giving them practical advice for a hard night. It is the defense mechanism against invisible decay. That root changes everything about the command. When Jesus tells his disciples to watch, he is not asking them to monitor the political landscape. He is not telling them to track the movements of the Roman military or the shifting moods of the Pharisees. He is demanding that they monitor their own internal vulnerability. Watching is not about looking outward at the world. It is about looking inward at the soul. He is warning them that spiritual death does not usually happen in a sudden, violent explosion of rebellion. It happens in the slow, comfortable drift of sleep. It happens when you close your eyes to the reality of the war raging around you, convincing yourself that the quiet in the air means you are safe. But that theoretical warning is about to become a devastating physical reality. The Passover meal ends. The hymns fade. They walk into the dark, down into the Kidron Valley, up into a grove of ancient, twisted olive trees. The place is called Gethsemane. The name literally means the oil press. The air is freezing. The shadows are absolute. Jesus takes Peter, James, and John deeper into the trees. His breathing changes. His chest heaves. Sweat drops from his face, thick and heavy like blood.